city in Florida. They're hard to find, aren't they? Maybe we have Sarasota, St. Augustine, God, where else? I don't even know. Maybe West Palm Beach, since we moved there. Huh? Well, back when I was at university a long time ago, in 1960, and studied biochemistry, I was an outstanding obese young American. I actually was a pioneer in the field of obesity. If hardly anyone was fat enough. But because I was a man, they never much told me I was overweight. They told me I was big, so that sounded better. The only exercise I did is lift cigarettes to my mouth, 3 packs a day. And on this hand, it was not quite as well developed. It was marijuana. I was in good shape, I'll tell you. All at once, my girlfriend, best friend, boyfriend shows up, and he's a bigot. I knew he instantaneously must have been a homosexual. In the New York City area where I grew up, you didn't need me. A man's a man. What are you talking about? So I said, something's wrong with this. He also did something I never heard about called yoga. And that was the weirdest thing I ever saw in my life. He stood on his head, twisted his body around, and he had muscles. Nobody had muscles in those days. Now, the good news was he was about 10 years older than us. And when you're 20 and somebody 30, they seem like a prophet to you. And he wisely sat down with me one day after I was hugging and kissing my dog, and he said, you know, you just love animals, don't you? I said, absolutely. It sounds naive to us now. He said, you're eating. As much as I loved animals, and I mean, I used to take butter, fry it, and then put the salami and bologna into it. I used to walk around with kibasi in my back pocket. I thought that was sexy, by the way. You haven't even figured out it should have been in the front. And one fell swoop gave up all meats. Now, for the first year I was climbing the wall every time I drove by a stand that was frying some meat. But then about 12 months into it, I looked and said, my God, I used to like that. That's amazing. Now, the real struggle for me was the dairy food, because my first thought was, well, gee, we're slaughtering these animals, and I do really love them. That was pretty easy to do as far as it was my addiction to that non-food supplement. But the dairy food wasn't quite as easy. And it comes in a lot of different ways, as you know. And they have you fooled. They tell you things like yogurt are good for you. They tell you ice cream that has a Norwegian-sounding name is better than other ice cream. And so I was on my way and eating all that left and right. It took me 3 years to give the dairy food up. And that's when I had lost about 120 pounds. And all at once, my brain and my heart started to work together. I just couldn't believe it. I said, my God, I'm starting to feel a little bit more compassionate than I like. A little bit more aware than I thought I could be. And slowly but surely, the evolution happened. So here I was sitting in class being taught that one cannot survive without consumption of animal-based foods, and I was flourishing, becoming conscious, becoming aware, and having to study outside of the university setting to learn good information. And in my 20s, I started to realize how corrupt everything is. It's unbelievably corrupt. Now, well into my 60s, I assure you, it's unbelievably corrupt. So 41 years ago, I began my work. And one summer I was out in the state of Oregon, and where I live, it didn't rain every day. As a matter of fact, it was sunny every day, 100 degrees. I just stopped eating cooked food. And by August, I woke up enough to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm eating nothing but raw food. And I went to a whole different place of doing good. I remember reading this little orange book, this crazy Lithuanian woman out of Boston called Be Your Own Doctor. And I said, well, someday I've got to visit her. And went back and visited her in Boston. In 1975, she asked me to join the staff of Hippocrates. And in those days, 100% of the people that came to us, or at least 99%, were dying. Nobody would ever have fathomed in the 1950s when we started. Now it's 57 years. We're the oldest institute of natural health care on the planet. In 1956, she opened the doors after she healed herself of stage 4 colon cancer. And in the 50s and 60s and 70s, you had to be darn sick before you could consider doing anything on your own. And when I was a boy, and why I chose to get into science in the middle of the 20th century, was we really thought science was going to take us out of the dark age. It's going to revolutionize everything. That our work weeks would be 20 hours. Robots would run them. By the year 2000, we would eradicate all major diseases. Boy, were they wrong. Now we added an extra 20 hours on our work week. I haven't seen a robot lately, have you? And we're sicker than we've ever been in human history. And I recognize that this instinctually wise woman who had no formal education, Anne Wigmore, who was a peasant from Lithuania, who fled her country that had been in war for 100 years as a sick young girl, had more knowledge than all of the professors, all of my doctor, colleague, friends, etc. And she was talking truth out of her heart. That heart was big, wide, loud, clear, and I, of course, was trying to develop my persona, my personality, and always would ask her very sophisticated, I thought really sophisticated, weren't really, educational questions. Please give me the science on how this works. And she'd say, don't you get it? And I'll never forget one day, she finally got frustrated with me asking silly questions, and she grabbed a little sunflower seed, black little sunflower seed. So do you realize if I put this in the ground, in 7 weeks it's going to be a 15-foot plant that has thousands of seeds on it, that in the morning when you get up, it faces the east, and it moves. When the sun's going down, it's facing the west. Do you realize that you're taking hundreds, if not thousands, of these a day in your salads and juices? Now tell me that that doesn't have the power. Bingo, I got it. And I realized that all that I'd learned about proteins and vitamins and minerals and trace minerals and then essential fats started to emerge around that time were sort of important, but it was really the mundane part, the very mundane part of nutrition. It's the one we talk about mostly because they can sell you that. Quantitative solvent, they can put it in bottles, charge you X amount of money, you can relate to it. It's what we call the matter-based thinking of science today. That why we are utterly failing in mainstream science and in great part in natural health care, we still look at you in a matter-based way. No different than if I say, what is that? You say it's a table, and I say, no, it's not. Anyone know what that really is? Energy. Everything's energy. And so, slowly but surely, I started to recognize that and understand it, not really understand it, but search for it. And it was hard to find information on it. Back in 1978, they sent me over to Europe, where I spent 3 years reintroducing to Europe raw living food. Now when I say reintroduce, when you hear the word living food and you attribute it to Hippocrates Health Institute, it's incorrect. The word living food came out of Norway and Denmark from a Dr. Christine Nulfi, who about 100 years ago, a medical doctor, had cancer. And she got on raw food, healed herself, and opened up a center called Home to Garden that I directed in 1979 for a year. And when I started to understand all of these different things, I kept searching and searching, and around the same time, I read about this remarkable lady who was at the University of California, Los Angeles, called Dr. Valerie Hunt. Dr. Hunt was the mother of the pioneer of the creator of what we call today biofrequency medicine. Now, everything I was reading was tickling my heart and my head. I didn't understand a damn thing she was talking about, but it was really enchanting to me, interesting. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So last year, there were a lot of different loose ends flying around in my mind that I had never really come up with concrete answers to